Hey everyone, welcome to 996 Howl for the uninitiated. This is an unedited YouTube vlog discussing everything Arizona Coyotes. Thought about doing a recap video, but just think the whole fan base just wants to progress and move forward, and that's just what we're gonna do. So they released the top 30 unrestricted free agents yesterday. The Hockey News magazine did. And I was looking through the names and thought, you know what, this is interesting. The Coyotes obviously are going to face a lot of changes this offseason with regards to maybe a new GM. Well, obviously, it'll be a new GM, but is it going to be Steve Sullivan? Are they going to go out and get a new GM? What's the vision of the team going to be? Is Tocchet safe with his job? Lineup changes, roster changes, all of that, cap circumvention. A lot of things up in the air, but so let's take a crack at one and move on to the next thing. So for UFAs, what's going to happen? We're not going to get too much into the math, into the cap numbers too much, because no one wants to do math. So this is just who I feel the Coyotes should be going after in this UFA season. Obviously, to start, I want Taylor Hall. I would like Taylor Hall back at the right price. Would not pay $10 million or more for a Hall. Obviously, as a biased Coyotes fan, I think $8 million for how many ever years is fair. I don't think Taylor Hall is ever going to replicate that Hart season. I think he needs to know that too. I loved his physicality, his leadership, the way he played. He was obviously one of the better forwards on the ice when the Coyotes acquired him, and in the playoffs he was for the Coyotes, next to Clayton Keller. What hurts the most about wanting Taylor Hall is that the team should get Taylor Hall, and they should have never gone out and got Phil Kessel, and now we're left with kind of a dead anchor on the team with Kessel. Hopefully Kessel could miraculously get back to where he was with Pittsburgh, but I don't think it's happening on this Coyotes team. So we're stuck with his huge cap hit for the next 2 more seasons, which hurts the Coyotes' chances of signing Hall to a contract Hall wants. But moving on from Hall, I think the center position, the Coyotes need to beef up and change a bit. So, and the UFA centerman this season is pretty shallow, pretty poor to be honest. But the top of my list would be Erik Holla, who had a monstrous season with the Vegas Golden Knights in their inaugural season, scoring 29 goals. Then he had a knee injury in a subsequent season. He was traded to Carolina and then traded to Florida. We're going to be talking about Florida a lot this video. Florida traded Trocheck to Carolina and got Holla in return. The Florida Panthers have publicly said that they want to shed salary whichever way they can, and I don't think they're going to re-sign Erik Holla. Right now he's making $2.75 million off of 2 poor seasons due to injury. So maybe you're looking at a $3 million, $3.5 million little raise for Erik Holla, who could fill in third-line center for the Coyotes. So he scored 29 goals once. I like him. I like Erik Holla. I like his name. If he could be that replacement for Stepan, whether Stepan goes this offseason or when his contract expires next season, I would love Erik Holla to be a Derek Stepan replacement. So for me, Erik Holla, 29 years old, is my number 1 center for UFAs the Coyotes should look at. From there, it's fourth-line centers. So if the Coyotes move on from Brad Richardson, I have Ennis, Brassard, and Melker Karlsson, who could replace Brad Richardson. Tyler Ennis had a resurgence when he got put onto the Toronto Maple Leafs. From there, he had 18 goals in 70 games last season with Edmonton and Ottawa. Derek Brassard, bit of an aging guy, 32 years old, but Brad Richardson's also old, so at least he's younger than Richardson. Hasn't produced offensively much. He's a pure fourth-line centerman. Maybe he goes on the PK. He's had the past 6 years, he's been on 6 different teams in the Rangers, Ottawa, Pittsburgh, Florida, Colorado, and he's with the Islanders right now in the playoffs. So he wants stability. Maybe you could get him for cheap. Right now he makes $1.2 million. Maybe you go to him and say, hey, I'll give you $1.5 million for 3 years, 3 to 4 years. That's your Brad Richardson replacement, equal salary caps, bit more of a veteran guy, has some more offensive upside in his history than Brad Richardson had in his history. That 19-goal season was an anomaly. I hope Richardson stays. I love Richardson. But if they do move on, those are a couple guys. And Melker Carlson from the Sharks. He's younger. He's 30 years old. Doesn't really produce offensively, but he works hard, goes into the dirty areas, has a nose for the net. Maybe a good fourth line centerman. He makes $2 million. He'll probably get a pay cut in free agency because he hasn't produced at all in recent years. So you're looking at a $1.5 million contract there. Who, if Richardson goes, I'd rather have Melker Carlson as a fourth line center than Chaput from the Tucson Roadrunners. So that's my reasoning there. So you have Holla, Ennis, Brassard, and Carlson as my centermen to look out for. Holla being the third line center and the rest being fourth line center replacements for Brad Richardson if he decides to go. Looking at wingers, like I said, I want Taylor Hall first and foremost. Whichever way they could afford him, they got to make huge moves, but they need to make moves to sign Taylor Hall. Yeah, in the centermans, Carl Soderberg. We're moving on from Soderberg. Too much money. I think that's the best choice for the Coyotes. So for wingers, I have Dadadoff and Hoffman. I told you I'd be talking about Florida today in this video. So let's get at it. Dadadoff is pretty underrated, 31 years old. He scored 28 goals, 25 goals in his most 3 recent seasons with Florida. Makes only $4 million. So you're looking at a guy who pots in about the latter half of the 20s, so mid-20 goals each season, makes $4 million. Probably going to get a raise. Maybe you could get him for 5.5. Sign him for 5.5. It's kind of a cheaper haul. But he puts up goal numbers. He's not a leader like Hall. He doesn't control the game like Taylor Hall, but he could score. And his teammate, Mike Hoffman, all this guy does is score goals. And John Chuck has always talked about Mike Hoffman. Whenever it's trade deadline or free agency or whatever, Hoffman's name is always around the Coyotes. He's 30 years old, a late bloomer, more expensive than Dadadoff. He makes $5.2 million. So only $800K less than Hall. But this guy's got back-to-back 30-goal seasons, and he's got 6 years straight of 20-plus goal seasons. So all this guy does is score, but he is not a leader. He won't drive lines. He's a nice supplementary guy who scores goals, and all he does is score goals. So, I mean, I would rather Hall than Hoffman, but if Hoffman is willing to come, maybe on a $6.5 million contract, that's good. I should say that after this next season coming up, the Coyotes have tons of cap space. So that's kind of my thinking for most of these free agent deals. Obviously, none of these really make sense for next season because they're cap strapped. But if they make moves here and there, trading Ranta, trading a defenseman, trading Stepan, they can make some room for these guys. These guys aren't $10 million players. Maybe Hall is, but Dadadoff and Hoffman, you can get him at 6 for sure, 6.5. And Holla, he's making 2.75. You could get him for 3.5 for sure. So I think that's it for forwards. For defense, if the Coyotes ever decide to move away from a certain defenseman, whether it be Demers, Goligoski, or Johnerson, there's a couple nice defensemen who are a bit cheaper and more. They play the same defensive style the Coyotes need. They don't need more offensive defensemen. Hopefully OEL and Chychrun and Soderstrom could fill that role. But for defensive defensemen, I'm looking at Brendan Dillon, who's 30 years old, makes about $3 million. So it's cheaper than those guys I mentioned. You could get him for $3.5 million. And then you have DeMello, who I think is on Ottawa, and he only makes $900,000. And he's 27 years old. So he's a defensive defenseman. He's cheap. He could be a nice filler on the bottom pairings. If you move on from a guy like Demers or Goligoski, it's a defensive defenseman right there. And then you have Eric Gustafsson, who is from the Chicago Blackhawks, went to Calgary. He's 28 years old, makes $1.2 million. I think he's more on the offensive side, but he's still a really good defenseman. He's cheap. He's 28 years old. Not too much money. Get him for 2.5, maybe. Get him a nice raise for $3 million. So if the guys move on from Demers, Goligoski, Johnerson, Gustafsson, a cheap replacement who's NHL ready and was acquired by the Calgary Flames at the trade deadline, so he's sought after by certain teams. So that could be nice for the Coyotes. Other notes I would like to say is to stay away from guys like Nemesnikov and Granlund. Nemesnikov is currently on the Avalanche, and Granlund's on Nashville. I just feel like those players are very supplementary, they They don't drive teams. They don't drive lines. They're just there to pocket in some goals. I feel like the Coyotes need more players to drive them and to put them on a path and to carry them wherever they want to go. And I feel like Taylor Hall will do that. And Erik Haula is a nice addition to round out this center field for the Coyotes. Because you have Dvorak step on. Hayden's going to be in the lineup. Nick Schmaltz. Hayden and Schmaltz could play wing positions. But I just think Hall is a nice third-line center for this team. And also, the Coyotes could really do nothing this offseason, not sign Taylor Hall, shed some salary, and then next season, when they have a lot of cap space, they could throw a huge bunch of money at centerman next UFA season. But looking at the next year's UFA season in the year 2021, only Landeskog and Krejci are prominent names, and Ovechkin. But Ovechkin, he's staying with Washington. Landeskog will probably stay with Colorado too, but you could throw some money at Landeskog, be like, you know what? Your time in Colorado is ending. If they do have a miserable ending against the Dallas Stars, which are down 2-0, maybe the Yotes go to him with a nice bag of money, $8 million, 6 years. He's a captain. He's a leader. He's stability. He's a number one center, which the Coyotes need desperately. Or they could go to Krejci. Krejci's a bit more expensive, but I think he's going to get a pay cut. He hasn't been producing at a $7.5 million production the past couple seasons. But Krejci's a nice second-line guy. Get him for $6 million. Maybe throw some money at him next UFA season. But yeah, if the Coyotes want to get a number one centerman, you got Landeskog, maybe Krejci next UFA season. There's nothing in the UFA area this season. Maybe a trade will have to occur if the Coyotes want to go that direction. But yeah, those are my thoughts on some UFAs. I would love Erik Haula on this team. I would love Taylor Hall on this team. If none of those happen, there's some supplementary guys there. Maybe Dadadoff I'd like on the team, or Gustafsson, or even Dylan or DeMello. I feel like nice defensive defensemen, so we can move on from those higher cap hits currently on the Coyotes defense. So that's it for me. There will be a lot of videos coming out about the GM, about the coach, about OEL, about the cap, about trades or trade partners. So stay tuned, stick to this channel, keep it locked, and thank you for watching, and thank you for your support.